Montana Territory, 1868. The wide expanse of blue sky stretched endlessly above the rolling prairie, seemingly untouched by the blood that had soaked into this contested land over generations. Owen Walker rode alone, as he preferred it. At 25, his eyes held the weathered gaze of a man who had seen far more than his years suggested. The frontier had taught him early that attachment only bred heartache. His parents' graves marked the bitter lesson, two simple wooden crosses on the eastern Colorado plain, victims of a raid that left him orphaned at 14. The lesson had been reinforced countless times since. Friends who fell to bullets, fever, or the merciless winter. Even animals. Especially animals. Owen had sworn never to name another horse after his childhood stallion died beneath him during a crossing. What was the point? The frontier took everything eventually. A man stands tallest when he stands alone, Owen muttered to himself, adjusting the wide brim of his hat against the summer sun. His lean frame sat easy in the saddle, muscled arms tanned dark from seasons in the saddle. Though handsome, with sharp cheekbones and eyes the color of storm clouds, he rarely bothered with the social pleasantries that might have made him welcome in frontier settlements. His current mount, he simply called him Horse, carried him steadily across the tall grass toward the foothills of the Bitterroot Mountains. Owen had taken a job driving cattle to a new ranch near Fort Owen, the kind of solitary work that suited a man with no ties and no intention of making any. The gold rushes had brought settlers streaming into Montana, and with them came the need for beef. It was honest work that kept him moving, kept him from getting too comfortable anywhere. What Owen wanted was simple: enough money to keep riding, enough whiskey to dull the memories on bad nights, and enough distance from anyone who might mistake him for someone worth caring about. What he needed, though he would have denied it fiercely, was something to fill the hollow space that grew inside him with each passing season of solitude. The afternoon sun beat down as Owen guided his horse toward a stand of cottonwoods that promised water and shade. He'd been pushing hard since dawn, and both he and the animal needed rest. As they approached the small creek, Owen felt Horse tense beneath him, nostrils flaring. "Easy," he murmured, scanning the area for whatever had spooked the animal. In the flickering shadows beneath the trees, he saw nothing amiss, until a flicker of movement caught his eye. The snake struck with lightning speed, fangs sinking into Horse's front leg before Owen could react. The prairie rattler slithered away through the grass as Horse reared in pain and panic, nearly throwing Owen from the saddle before he could dismount. "No, no, no," Owen muttered, his voice cracking as he caught the reins and tried to calm the terrified animal. "Stay still. Just stay still." The wound was already swelling, two clear puncture marks visible on the animal's leg. Owen had seen this before. Without treatment, the horse would be dead by nightfall. Something cold and desperate clawed at his chest as he knelt beside his mount, frantically searching his saddlebags for anything that might help. "Not you too," he whispered, his throat tight with emotion he rarely allowed himself to feel. Damn it all. For the first time in years, Owen Walker felt tears burning behind his eyes. He blinked them back furiously, but his horse collapsed to his side, breathing labored and eyes rolling in fear. A single tear tracked down his dust-covered cheek. Then another, and another. "Please," he said to no one, to an indifferent sky. "I cannot lose another one. Your horse will die if you just sit there crying, Cowboy." The voice startled him so badly he nearly fell backward. Owen's hand instinctively moved to his revolver as he spun around, but what he saw froze him in place. She stood at the edge of the cottonwoods, a young woman with midnight black hair braided in two long plaits that fell past her shoulders. Her dress was a mixture of traditional Apache clothing and frontier practicality, a calico blouse over a long skirt adorned with intricate beadwork. Her eyes, dark and penetrating, held no sympathy for his tears, only a calm assessment of the situation. "He will die," she repeated, stepping forward. "Unless you help me save him." "Who are you?" Owen managed, his voice still thick with emotion. "Valeria Longbow," she replied, moving past him to kneel beside Horse. She looked to be about 20, her movements confident as she examined the bite. "My father was a Spanish trader. My mother is what you call Apache, and I know how to treat snake venom, if you will let me." Owen hesitated, caught between suspicion and desperation. The frontier had taught him to distrust strangers, especially those from tribes with whom relations were often hostile, but Horse's labored breathing left him no choice. "Please," he said simply. "Help him." Valeria nodded once and immediately began issuing instructions. "I need your knife. And your canteen. Then gather wood for a fire." For the next hour, Owen followed her commands without question. He watched as she made a careful incision, drained blood and venom, applied a poultice of plants she had gathered from along the creek, and wrapped the leg with strips torn from her own petticoat. Her hands moved with practiced skill, her face a mask of concentration. "My grandfather taught me the old ways," she explained as she worked. "The plants that heal, the songs that strengthen. The white doctor at the fort has begun to ask me what I know. He says my knowledge is valuable." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the prairie, Horse's breathing had steadied. Valeria sat back on her heels, wiping sweat from her brow. "He may live now. The poison has been drawn out. But he needs rest, at least 3 days. You cannot ride him." Owen stared at her. This woman who had appeared from nowhere and saved the animal he had been too afraid to even name. "Why did you help me?" Valeria's expression softened slightly. "All life deserves respect, Cowboy. Even yours." She stood and gathered her few belongings. "There is a trading post 2 miles west. My uncle's place. You can rest there until your horse recovers." "I cannot pay much," Owen admitted, suddenly aware of how vulnerable he had allowed himself to become. "I did not ask for payment," she replied, her gaze direct. "But you will need to lead your horse, and night comes quickly. So decide now if you will follow." The inciting incident that would upend Owen Walker's careful isolation came not in the form of the snake bite, but in the moment he chose to follow Valeria Longbow across the darkening prairie. It contradicted everything the frontier had taught him, that survival meant self-reliance, that trust was a luxury he couldn't afford, that attachment only led to loss. Yet here he was, leading his wounded horse behind this mysterious woman, drawn by something he could not name. The trading post was a sturdy log structure nestled against a low hill, with a corral for livestock and several outbuildings. Lanterns glowed in the windows as they approached, and a stocky, gray-haired man emerged from the doorway as they drew near. "Valeria?" We were beginning to worry. The man's eyes narrowed as he spotted Owen. "And who is this you bring?" "A foolish cowboy with a snake-bitten horse. Uncle Joseph," she replied calmly. "He needs shelter for a few days." Joseph studied Owen with open suspicion. "We don't get many passing through here without purpose. What's your business in these parts?" "Cattle drive for the new Caldwell spread near Fort Owen," Owen replied, keeping his voice level despite his exhaustion. "Name's Owen Walker." "Caldwell, Joseph's expression remained wary. "That land has been contested. Some say it rightfully belongs to the Salish." Owen felt tension coiling in his gut. He wanted nothing to do with land disputes or frontier politics. "I'm just hired to move cattle, sir. Nothing more." Valeria exchanged words with her uncle in Apache, a brief but intense conversation that ended with Joseph sighing heavily. 3 days, he said finally. "Your horse can recover in our stable. You can sleep in the storage room. But I'll be watching you, Walker. We've had trouble with cowboys before." "Thank you, sir," Owen replied, relief washing through him. "I won't cause any trouble." That night, after Horse had been settled in the stable with fresh water and a blanket, Owen found himself sitting awkwardly at the trading post's kitchen table. Joseph's wife, a kind-faced woman named Martha, set a bowl of stew before him while Valeria sat across the table, her expression unreadable. "Valeria says you were crying over your horse," Martha said, her tone gentler than her husband's had been. Not many cowboys would shed tears for an animal. Owen felt heat rise in his cheeks. "I wasn't. Do not lie," Valeria interrupted. "I saw your tears. There is no shame in caring for a creature that carries you safely. A horse is just a tool out here," Owen muttered, uncomfortable with her scrutiny. "Foolish to get attached. Is that what you believe about all living things?" Valeria asked. "That attachment is foolish." Her question struck too close to the truth he had constructed for himself. Owen focused on his stew, avoiding her penetrating gaze. "The frontier doesn't reward sentiment, Miss Longbow. I've buried enough to know that." "Yet you wept for your horse," she persisted. "So perhaps you are not as hard as you pretend to be." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of 2 Salish men who had come to trade furs with Joseph. Owen retreated to the small storage room that would be his bed for the next few nights, grateful for the escape from Valeria's unsettling observations. As he lay on his bedroll, listening to the murmur of voices from the main room, he realized he had told Valeria more about himself in one evening than he had shared with anyone in years. The thought troubled him as he drifted into restless sleep. The next morning, Owen woke at dawn out of habit. He found Valeria already in the stable, checking on Horse's condition. "The swelling is better," she informed him without preamble, "but he still needs rest." "Thank you," Owen said, the words feeling strange on his tongue. "For all of this." Valeria nodded, then handed him a wooden bucket. "You can fetch water from the creek as thanks, and then help Joseph unload the supply wagon that arrived yesterday. My uncle is not as young as he pretends." For the next 2 days, Owen found himself drawn into the rhythm of the trading post. He helped Joseph stack goods, repaired a section of the corral fence, and even assisted Martha with chopping wood for the kitchen stove. To his surprise, he did not mind the work or the company. Joseph's initial suspicion gradually eased, and he began sharing stories of his years as a trapper before he married Martha and established the trading post. This country was different then, Joseph told him as they sorted inventory. Less divided. A man was judged by his character, not where he came from. "Some would say those days never existed," Owen replied carefully. Joseph chuckled. "Perhaps, but there was more room for people to find their own way. Before the gold rushes, before the war, before everyone started claiming what wasn't theirs to claim." Each evening, Owen found himself sitting longer at the kitchen table, listening to Joseph and Martha's stories of the early days of the territory. And each evening, he felt Valeria's eyes on him, assessing, questioning. She said little, but when she did speak, her words carried weight. On the third day, as Owen checked Horse's condition, greatly improved thanks to Valeria's continued care, she finally asked the question he had been dreading. "What are you running from, Owen Walker?" He straightened, bristling at her directness. "Who says I'm running? A man who refuses to name his horse? Who rides alone through contested territory? Who carries a photograph he thinks no one notices him looking at when he believes himself unobserved?" She leaned against the stable door, arms crossed. "You are running from something. Or someone." Owen's hand instinctively moved to his shirt pocket, where the worn photograph of his parents resided, the only possession he truly valued. "My past is my own business," he said stiffly. "Is it? Or is it the reason you help with chores without being asked, yet flinch when Martha tries to thank you? The reason you speak kindly to the Salish traders despite the tensions between your people and theirs? The reason you wept for a horse you pretend not to care about?" Her words struck with the precision of arrows, finding vulnerabilities he thought he had armored against the world. Before he could respond, Joseph appeared at the stable entrance. "Riders coming," he announced tensely. 6 men. Looked like trouble. Owen followed them to the front of the trading post, where Martha already stood, her face tight with concern. In the distance, a cloud of dust signaled the approaching horsemen. "Could be just customers," Owen suggested, though something in Joseph's expression told him otherwise. "No," Joseph replied grimly. "I recognize the lead rider. Wade Thornton. He's been trying to force me to sell this place for months. Claims the trading post is on land his company has rights to." "Land speculators," Martha added, her voice bitter. "They've been pushing out anyone with claims they want, especially those with Indian blood or ties." Owen felt something cold settle in his stomach. "I should go? This isn't my fight." Valeria turned to him, disappointment clear in her eyes. "So you run again. Just as I thought." Her words stung more than they should have, but before Owen could defend himself, the riders arrived in a flurry of dust and pounding hooves. Wade Thornton was a heavy-set man with a florid face and expensive clothes that marked him as no ordinary frontiersman. His companions looked harder, hired guns with cold eyes that assessed the trading post and its occupants with professional interest. "Joseph," Thornton called out with false joviality. "Reconsidered my offer yet? Times are changing, old man. This territory's going to be a state soon. Progress waits for no one, especially not half-breed traders and their Indian relations." Owen saw Joseph's hands clench into fists, saw Martha's fearful glance at Valeria, who stood straight-backed and defiant. "My answer hasn't changed, Thornton," Joseph replied evenly. "This land was deeded to me legally 15 years ago. Your paper claims don't change that. Thornton's smile didn't reach his eyes. Those deeds might not hold up to closer examination, especially with territorial judges who understand the importance of development. His gaze shifted to Owen. Who's this new hired hand? Just passing through. Owen replied, fighting the instinct to back away from the confrontation. My horse was injured. Cattle driver for the Caldwell spread, Joseph added, and Owen saw Thornton's expression sharpen with interest. Caldwell, eh? Interesting timing. That ranch has had some troubles lately. Mysterious cattle disappearances, fence cutting. Dangerous business, cattle driving in disputed territory. The threat was thinly veiled, and Owen felt an unfamiliar anger rising in his chest. Here was the frontier at its worst. Men using power and intimidation to take what wasn't theirs. The same kind of men who had left him orphaned and alone. Seems like a man ought to be careful about making threats in front of witnesses, Owen found himself saying, his hand casually resting near his holstered revolver. A tense silence fell. Owen was acutely aware of being outnumbered, of the dangerous game he was suddenly playing. This wasn't his fight, yet here he was, stepping into it willingly for people he barely knew. Thornton's eyes narrowed. You'd be wise to mind your own business, cowboy. Many accidents happen on the frontier. Is that what happened to the Blackfoot family that was camping near Miller Creek last month? Valeria spoke up suddenly. An accident? Thornton's face darkened with anger. Watch your tongue, girl. Making accusations you can't prove is dangerous. Leave her out of this, Owen said, taking a deliberate step forward. For a moment, violence hung in the air like the promise of a storm. Then Thornton laughed, though his eyes remained cold. We'll be back, Joseph. And next time, I won't be offering to buy. He turned his horse, nodding to his men. Let's ride. As the dust from their departure settled, Owen found his heart pounding with adrenaline. He had nearly drawn on 6 armed men. For what? For people who were little more than strangers to him. Yet as he looked at Valeria, whose gaze now held something new when it rested on him, respect, perhaps, he felt something shift inside him. A wall crumbling, a truth he had been running from for years. You didn't have to do that, Joseph said quietly. No, Owen agreed. I didn't. That night, as a summer thunderstorm rolled across the prairie, Owen sat on the trading post's covered porch, watching lightning illuminate the distant mountains. The door opened behind him, and Valeria stepped out, carrying 2 cups of coffee. My uncle says your horse can travel tomorrow, she said, handing him one of the cups before sitting beside him. You'll be able to continue your journey. Owen nodded, staring into the darkness. Thornton will be back. Yes, he always comes back. Each time with more men, more threats. She sipped her coffee. It is the story of this land. The powerful pushing out those they deem less important. Like your mother's people, Owen said softly. Like many people. The Salish, the Blackfoot, the Crow. Even settlers like my uncle and aunt, who try to live honestly between worlds. She turned to study his profile. You still have not told me what you are running from. The darkness made it easier, somehow. With the storm growling overhead and the safety of imminent departure, Owen found himself speaking of things he had kept buried for years. My parents had a small ranch in eastern Colorado. Nothing grand, just enough land for a decent herd, a place to build a life. His voice grew distant with memory. In '57, there was trouble, fighting between settlers and Cheyenne warriors who were starving because white hunters had decimated the buffalo herds. Raids, reprisals, a cycle of violence. He paused, the old pain rising fresh. My father wasn't like other settlers. He'd traded fairly with the Cheyenne for years, learned their language. He tried to stand between worlds, to advocate for peace. A bitter laugh escaped him. For his trouble, he and my mother were killed, not by Indians, as everyone assumed, but by land speculators who wanted their water rights. Men like Thornton. Lightning flashed, illuminating Valeria's face, intent, compassionate. I was 14. I saw it happen from where I was hiding in the creek bed. Saw them murder my parents, then burn our cabin to make it look like an Indian raid. His hand tightened around the coffee cup. I've been running ever since. Taking jobs that keep me moving, never staying anywhere long enough to form attachments. Because the frontier takes everything eventually. Everyone. So you became a ghost, Valeria said softly. Moving through the world, but not of it. It's safer that way. Is it? She turned fully toward him. You have been running for 11 years, Owen Walker. Has it healed anything? Has it brought justice for your parents? Has it made you happy? Her questions stripped him bare, exposed the hollow lie at the center of his existence. Before he could formulate a response, she continued. My grandfather told me that a person cannot outrun their spirit. The more you run, the more lost you become, until one day you look around and realize you no longer know the way home. I don't have a home, Owen whispered. Everyone has a home, she replied. Sometimes it is not a place, but the people who see you truly. The storm broke overhead then, rain pounding on the porch roof and obscuring the momentary vulnerability that had passed between them. They sat in silence until the rain eased, and then Valeria stood. Rest well, Owen Walker. Tomorrow you can continue running, if that is still what you choose. Her words haunted him as he lay sleepless in the storage room, the photograph of his parents clutched in his hand. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to really look at their faces, his father's kind eyes, his mother's gentle smile. What would they think of the man he had become, drifting through life like a tumbleweed, afraid to put down roots? Morning brought clarity and a decision that surprised even him. I want to stay, he told Joseph over breakfast. Help you with the trading post. At least until Thornton shows his face again. Joseph studied him carefully. Why? Because men like Thornton took everything from me once. I'm tired of running from that truth. Joseph glanced at Valeria, who was pretending not to listen as she helped Martha with the dishes. It's not your fight, son. Maybe it should be, Owen replied. Maybe that's what my parents would have wanted. After a long moment, Joseph nodded. We could use the help. And another gun, if it comes to that. In the weeks that followed, Owen found himself drawn deeper into the life of the trading post and its surroundings. He helped Joseph reinforce the buildings, improve the corral, and learn the complexities of trading with the various tribes and settlers who passed through. He discovered that Joseph and Martha had created something remarkable, a neutral ground where Salish, Blackfoot, miners, trappers, and settlers could all do business relatively peacefully. More surprising was his growing connection to Valeria. She was unlike any woman he had ever known. Fiercely intelligent, skilled in both her mother's traditional healing practices and her father's languages, unafraid to speak her mind. She moved confidently between cultures, respected by the tribal elders who came to trade and the frontier women who sought her knowledge of medicinal plants. One evening, as they walked back from checking beaver traps along the creek, Valeria asked him a question that caught him off guard. Have you named your horse yet? Owen glanced at her, surprised. How did you know I hadn't named him? You never call him anything but horse, she replied with a small smile. Names have power. To name something is to acknowledge its importance in your life, to accept the risk of caring for it. Owen was quiet for a moment, thinking of the bay gelding that had carried him faithfully for 2 years, the animal he had been too afraid to name for fear of loss. Thundercloud, he said finally. Because of the storm the night we talked on the porch. Because his coat reminds me of the sky before rain. Valeria's smile widened. A good name. Strong. As summer deepened toward autumn, Owen found himself laughing more, speaking more freely, and sleeping more soundly than he had in years. The nightmares that had plagued him since his parents' deaths began to recede. He started to recognize himself again in quiet moments. The boy he had been before tragedy hardened him. But the peaceful interlude couldn't last. Tensions in the territory were rising as more settlers poured in, as tribal hunting grounds shrank, as the government's promises proved hollow. And Wade Thornton had not forgotten the trading post that stood in the way of his ambitions. The midpoint reversal came on a crisp September morning. Owen was repairing a wagon wheel when a rider appeared, a young Salish man named Michael who occasionally helped around the trading post. Soldiers, he reported breathlessly. At Fort Owen. They say they have orders to clear unauthorized settlements from disputed areas. Thornton was with them, pointing out places on a map. Joseph's face grew grim. How many soldiers? A small detachment. 20 maybe. But they had papers, government papers. Owen felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. He had seen this before. The machinery of government used as a tool by men like Thornton to legitimize theft. And he knew that Joseph's trading post, with its mixed blood ownership and reputation for fair dealing with the tribes, would be a prime target. We should prepare to defend ourselves, Owen said, his hand moving instinctively to the revolver at his hip. Joseph shook his head. Against the U.S. Army? That's suicide, son. And it would only confirm their belief that we're dangerous. Then what? Just let them take everything you've built. We have legal deeds, Martha insisted. Papers from the territorial governor himself. Papers can be lost, Valeria said quietly. Or rewritten. It has happened before. The reality of their situation hung heavy in the air. Even with Owen's help, they could not hope to withstand a military force. Yet fleeing meant surrendering everything Joseph and Martha had worked for over 15 years. There must be another way. Owen insisted, unwilling to accept defeat. Unwilling to lose another home to men like Thornton. Home. The word had slipped into his thoughts unbidden. Somehow, in just a few short weeks, this trading post with its odd collection of inhabitants had become more of a home than anywhere he had been since his parents died. As they debated their options, another rider appeared, a weather-beaten older man Owen recognized as one of the regular traders who traveled between the settlements. "You've got trouble coming," he announced without preamble. "Thornton's got a federal marshal with him, claiming this trading post is operating illegally on government land." "That's impossible," Joseph protested. "We have proper deeds." "Doesn't matter," the trader replied grimly. "Word is, Thornton's company made generous donations to the territorial governor's re-election fund. Suddenly there's talk of reviewing land claims in this area, especially those held by Indians or mixed bloods." Owen saw the defeat in Joseph's eyes, the resignation in Martha's slumped shoulders. They had faced this kind of corruption before, had been pushed from other homes by the inexorable tide of progress. But something in Owen rebelled against the inevitability of it. He had spent 11 years running, 11 years watching injustice triumph, because good people had no choice but to bend before it. "When will they come?" he asked. "Tomorrow, most like. They're gathering men in town tonight." As the trader departed with a promise to spread word to friendly settlers in the area, Owen found himself standing alone with Valeria near the corral. The autumn sun caught in her dark hair, turning the edges to gold. "You're planning something," she said, not a question but a statement. "Yes. Something dangerous." "Yes." She studied him, her eyes searching his face. "This isn't your fight, Owen Walker. You could ride away tonight, continue to your cattle drive. No one would blame you. I would blame me." He took a step closer to her. "For 11 years, I've been running from men like Thornton. Watching them win because they're willing to use violence and corruption while good people just try to survive. I'm tired of running." "Even if standing means losing?" she asked softly. "Even then." He hesitated, then reached for her hand. "Valeria, She pressed her fingers to his lips, stopping the words. "Not now? Not when tomorrow is so uncertain. If you have words for me, Owen Walker, save them for after we have faced what comes." That night, as Joseph and Martha prepared to evacuate their most valuable goods, Owen rode to Fort Owen. It was a desperate gamble, but he had to try. The fort's commander, Captain Lewis, was known to be a fair man, even if he was bound by orders. Owen was granted an audience, but his hopes were quickly dashed. "I understand your concern, Mr. Walker," Captain Lewis said, his manner formal but not unkind. "But I have direct orders from the territorial governor regarding unauthorized trading posts on federal land." "Joseph Longbow's post has been there for 15 years, Owen argued. "He has proper deeds, signed by a previous governor, which will need to be reviewed by the current administration." The captain sighed. "Mr. Thornton has raised concerns about illegal trading with hostile tribes, about weapons possibly being sold to Indians." "That's a lie," Owen said hotly. "Joseph runs the most honest trading post in the territory. Thornton just wants the land." Captain Lewis studied him thoughtfully. "You seem quite passionate about this matter for a man who, by your own admission, has only known the Longbow family for a few weeks." The observation struck home. Why was he fighting so hard for people who had been strangers to him such a short time ago? But in his heart, Owen knew the answer. In Joseph and Martha, he had found echoes of his own parents, people trying to stand between worlds, to create something good in a harsh place. And in Valeria, he had found a reason to stop running. "Sometimes," Owen said carefully, "a few weeks is enough to recognize the difference between right and wrong." The captain nodded slowly. "Perhaps, but I'm afraid my hands are tied by direct orders." He hesitated, then added in a lower voice, "However, I am required to give notice before any action is taken." And as it happens, my patrol cannot reach the trading post until the day after tomorrow at the earliest. It was a small concession, but better than nothing. As Owen rode back through the gathering darkness, his mind raced with possibilities. 2 days might be enough time to gather evidence of Thornton's corrupt dealings, to rally support from settlers who had traded fairly with Joseph for years. Or it might be enough time for Thornton to take matters into his own hands. Owen's fears proved prophetic. As he approached the trading post near midnight, he saw the flicker of torches in the distance and heard the pounding of hooves. A group of riders, not soldiers, but rough men hired by Thornton, were converging on the post. He spurred Thundercloud forward, racing to reach the trading post before the attackers. As he galloped into the yard, he shouted a warning. "Riders coming." Thornton's men. Joseph emerged from the main building, rifle in hand. Martha and Valeria followed, both armed. "How many?" Joseph demanded. "At least 10, maybe more." "Not soldiers." "No. Hired guns, by the look of them." Joseph's expression hardened. So Thornton couldn't wait for legal means. He sends criminals to do his dirty work under cover of night. They had little time to prepare. Owen and Joseph took positions at windows on the trading post's front wall, while Martha and Valeria guarded the rear. As the riders approached, Owen felt a strange calm settle over him. For the first time in years, he was not running. He was standing his ground for something that mattered. The night erupted in violence as Thornton's men surrounded the trading post, firing shots into the air and shouting demands for surrender. Owen and Joseph returned fire selectively, aiming to drive the attackers back rather than kill. For nearly an hour, the standoff continued, neither side gaining an advantage. Then Owen smelled smoke. "They're trying to burn us out," he called to Joseph. "The south wall." Before Joseph could respond, a cry of pain came from the rear of the building. Martha's voice, high with fear. Valeria's hit. Owen's world narrowed to a single, terrible point. Without thought for his own safety, he ran to the back room where Valeria had been stationed. She sat slumped against the wall, blood seeping through her fingers pressed against her shoulder. "It's not deep," she said through gritted teeth. "The bullet just grazed me." Relief flooded through him, quickly followed by rage. These men, these cowards hiding in the darkness, had hurt her, had threatened this place that had become his home, had reopened the wounds of his past that had just begun to heal. "Stay with her," Owen told Martha. Then, to Joseph, "I'm going to end this." Before Joseph could stop him, Owen slipped out the side door into the darkness. Years of living on the frontier had taught him how to move silently, how to use shadow and terrain to his advantage. He circled behind Thornton's men, identifying the one giving orders, Thornton himself, staying safely back from the fighting while urging his hired guns forward. With cold precision, Owen approached from behind and pressed his revolver against Thornton's back. "Call them off," he said quietly. "Now." Thornton froze. "Walker? You're making a mistake, boy. This isn't your fight. Call them off." Something in Owen's voice must have conveyed his deadly seriousness. Thornton raised his voice. "Hold your fire. Everyone hold." As the shooting subsided, Owen marched Thornton toward the front of the trading post, keeping the gun pressed firmly against the man's spine. "Tell your men to throw down their weapons and ride out," Owen ordered. "Or the next shot they hear will be the one that ends you." Thornton complied, his voice shaking with rage and fear. One by one, his hired guns lowered their weapons. "This doesn't change anything," Thornton spat. "The army will still come. The governor's orders still stand." "Maybe," Owen conceded, "but you won't be here to see it." "What do you mean?" "You're riding to Fort Owen tonight. You'll confess to Captain Lewis how you tried to burn out a legal trading post, how you hired gunmen to attack American citizens, how you've been falsifying land claims." Thornton laughed bitterly. "And why would I do that?" "Because if you don't," Owen said, his voice deadly quiet, "I will hunt you down and finish what my father started 11 years ago, when he exposed your partner's corrupt land deals in Colorado." He felt Thornton stiffen in shock. "Walker, not Timothy Walker's boy. The same." Owen's grip tightened on his revolver. "My father tried to stop your kind legally. He believed in justice, in the system. His reward was a bullet in the back and our home burned to ashes. I've spent 11 years running from that memory, but I'm not running anymore." The revelation hung in the air between them. Owen could feel the weight of his past pressing down, the ghosts of his parents watching as he stood at a crossroads. Justice or vengeance, the law or the gun. The choice is yours, Thornton, he said finally. Confession at Fort Owen, or a reckoning between us that only one will walk away from. In the tense silence that followed, Owen felt rather than saw Valeria approach, her wounded arm bound in a makeshift sling. Choose wisely, she told Thornton, her voice steady despite her injury. For I have witnessed everything tonight, and my testimony will stand in any court in this territory. The Ndi have long memories and many friends, even among the white settlers who value honest trade. It was the turning point, the moment when Thornton, faced with the combined strength of Owen's determination and Valeria's quiet authority, recognized his defeat. I'll go to the fort, he said finally. But this isn't over. For tonight, it is, Owen replied, lowering his weapon slightly. Joseph will accompany you, to ensure you arrive safely and tell the truth. As Joseph prepared to escort Thornton and his chastened men to Fort Owen, Owen found himself alone with Valeria in the kitchen. Martha was tending to a minor wound one of the friendly settlers had sustained during the firefight. You could have been killed, Valeria said, touching Owen's face with her uninjured hand. Confronting Thornton alone like that. I couldn't let him hurt you. Any of you. Owen covered her hand with his own. When I heard you were wounded, I realized something I've been trying to deny for weeks. And what is that, Owen Walker? That some things are worth the risk of loss. That hiding from attachment doesn't protect you from pain. It just guarantees you'll never know joy. He drew a deep breath. That I love you, Valeria Longbow. That I want to stop running and build something real with you, if you'll have me. In the soft glow of the kitchen lantern, her eyes shone with something that looked remarkably like hope. But before she could respond, the sound of approaching horses interrupted the moment. To their relief, it was Captain Lewis himself, along with a small detachment of soldiers. Word of the attack had reached the fort faster than expected. Mr. Walker, the captain greeted him formally. I received a rather urgent message from a young Salish man about illegal actions being taken against this trading post. Michael, Valeria explained. He must have gone for help when the shooting started. The next hours were consumed with explanations and official statements. Captain Lewis, to his credit, listened carefully to all sides of the story, including accounts from the settlers who had come to help defend the trading post. By dawn, the crisis had passed. Thornton was under arrest, his hired guns dispersed or detained. Captain Lewis assured Joseph that, pending a full investigation, the trading post could continue operations as normal. It seems Mr. Thornton may have misrepresented certain facts to the territorial government, the captain said dryly. Facts that will need to be clarified before any action is taken regarding land claims in this area. As the soldiers departed, Owen found himself exhausted but unable to rest. The events of the night had changed everything. He had confronted his past, had chosen to stand rather than run, had declared his love for Valeria, and she had not yet given him an answer. He found her at the creek behind the trading post, washing blood from her bandaged arm. The rising sun painted the water gold and copper, a perfect frame for her quiet beauty. How is your wound? He asked softly. It will heal, she replied, turning to face him. Wounds usually do, with proper care and time. Valeria, about what I said last night, did you mean it? She interrupted. Or was it the heat of battle speaking? The fear of loss making you reckless with words? Owen stepped closer, taking her uninjured hand in his. I meant every word. I love you. I think I started falling in love with you the moment you appeared from the trees and told me to stop crying over my snake-bitten horse. A smile touched her lips. You were quite pathetic. I was, he agreed. But you saw something in me worth saving, just as you saw something in Thundercloud. You made me face what I've been running from all these years. And now that you've faced it, now that Thornton is arrested and the trading post is safe, at least for now. The question contained another, unspoken. Would he stay, or would the habit of running prove too strong? Owen's answer came not in words, but in action. He knelt before her, still holding her hand. Valeria Longbow, I have spent 11 years as a ghost, moving through the world but never part of it. You brought me back to life. You showed me that a home isn't a place that can be burned or taken. It's the people who see you truly. He paused, gathering courage. If you'll have me, I want to build a life with you. Here, or wherever we decide. I want to stop running and start living." For a long moment, she simply looked at him, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, she smiled. A smile that transformed her face and sent warmth spreading through Owen's chest. "Yes," she said simply. "I will have you, Owen Walker. But you should know what you're getting. A woman of mixed blood, with one foot in each world and fully accepted by neither. A woman who will speak her mind even when it's uncomfortable. A woman who expects a partner, not a protector." "That's exactly the woman I love," Owen replied, rising to his feet. "And I hope you know what you're getting. A stubborn cowboy who spent years running from his feelings. A man still learning how to trust, how to stay, how to build rather than escape." "That's exactly the man I love," she echoed, and pulled him close for a kiss that sealed their commitment to each other. 3 months later, on a crisp December morning, Owen and Valeria were married at the trading post. Captain Lewis had kept his word. A full investigation had revealed Thornton's corrupt dealings, and the territorial governor, facing uncomfortable questions about his own role in the affair, had quickly reaffirmed Joseph and Martha's legal right to the trading post and surrounding land. The wedding was an unusual affair by frontier standards, a gathering that included Salish elders, settlers from nearby homesteads, soldiers from Fort Owen, and even a small delegation from Valeria's mother's Apache band, who had traveled north for the occasion. Joseph presided proudly over the ceremony, while Martha wiped tears as she watched the young woman she had helped raise pledge her life to the cowboy who had arrived with a snake-bitten horse and stayed to become family. As winter settled over the Montana territory, Owen and Valeria began building their own cabin on land adjacent to the trading post. Owen had written to the Caldwell Ranch, explaining his change in plans, and had received not only understanding, but an offer of partnership. Caldwell needed someone honest to manage cattle sales through the Northern Territory, someone who could navigate the complex relationships between settlers and tribes. It was work that suited Owen perfectly, work that allowed him to use his skills while building, rather than escaping, connections. And with Valeria beside him, combining her knowledge of traditional healing with the growing demand for medical care in the expanding territory, they created a life that bridged worlds rather than ran between them. On a January evening, as snow fell softly outside their new cabin, Owen sat by the fire with Valeria, her head resting against his shoulder. On the mantel stood the photograph of his parents, no longer hidden, but displayed proudly alongside images of Joseph, Martha, and Valeria's family. "Do you ever miss it?" Valeria asked softly. "The freedom of drifting, answering to no one, carrying your home on your back." Owen considered the question carefully. "Sometimes," he admitted. "The open trail has its own beauty, but it's a lonely beauty." He tightened his arm around her shoulders. "This, having a home, having you, this is worth any freedom I might have sacrificed." "It's not a sacrifice if it brings you greater joy," she replied, looking up at him with eyes that still saw through his defenses. "That's what my grandfather taught me about choices. They should expand your spirit, not diminish it." Outside, in the sturdy stable they had built, Thundercloud nickered softly to the new mare they had acquired, a wedding gift from Captain Lewis. Owen smiled at the sound. Like him, the horse had found a home after years of wandering. "Your grandfather was a wise man," Owen said. "I wish I could have met him." "He would have liked you," Valeria assured him. "He always said the true measure of courage isn't facing danger, but facing yourself. You've done both." As the fire crackled and night deepened outside, Owen Walker reflected on the strange, winding trail that had led him here, from the terrified, grief-stricken boy fleeing his parents' killers to the man who had found the courage to stop running and build a life worth living. He thought of the snake that had bitten his horse, of the tears he had been ashamed to shed, of the remarkable woman who had appeared from the trees and changed everything with her quiet strength and unflinching truth. "I love you," he whispered into Valeria's hair. "I know," she replied, a smile in her voice. "I have always known, even when you were too afraid to admit it." And in that moment, surrounded by the home they were building together, Owen Walker was finally, completely at peace, no longer running from the past, but walking steadily into a future bright with promise and love.